The rain beats against your window tonight. Or perhaps you're lying in darkness, headphones covering your ears, the world outside fading away into nothing. Wherever you are, whatever brought you here, you're welcome. Take a deep breath. Let your shoulders drop. Feel the tension drain from your body as we journey together into the dark Gothic streets of Yharnam. Tonight we're exploring something special. Not just the story of Bloodborne, but the stories of those who lived it. The hunters. Men and women who took up arms against the darkness, who fought beasts in the long night, who became legends, monsters, or martyrs. Some you've met, others exist only in whispers, in item descriptions, in the faded memories of those who survived them. This isn't a test. You don't need to remember every detail. Let the words wash over you like a dark lullaby. If you drift away into sleep, that's perfect. If you find yourself captivated, hanging on every word, that's wonderful too. There's no right way to experience this journey through the tragic tales of Yharnam's hunters. So close your eyes if you'd like. Get comfortable. And let me tell you about the men and women who hunted beasts beneath a blood-soaked moon. In the beginning there was Gehrman. Before the healing church established their grand cathedrals, before Ludwig inspired a generation with holy purpose, before the hunt became the ritual we know, there was one man who stood up against the beasts. One craftsman, one warrior, who would become something more, something less. The first hunter, trapped forever in a dream that never ends. Gehrman's story begins in the shadows of Byrgenwerth, that college of scholars perched beside the Great Lake. He wasn't a student like Lawrence or Master Willem. He didn't wear their robes or attend their lectures. Gehrman was something different. A man of practical skill rather than theoretical knowledge. A craftsman, a warrior. Someone who could turn theory into deadly reality. When Byrgenwerth scholars discovered the old blood in the depths beneath their college, when they uncovered the secrets of the ancient Thumerian civilization, they needed someone to protect them, someone to venture into those dark places and deal with whatever lurked there. Gehrman became that someone. He was the first to truly understand what hunting beasts would require, not brute strength or heavy armor, but speed, agility, precision. Beasts were fast, unpredictable, savage. To fight them, you needed to be faster. You needed weapons that could transform mid-combat, adapting to every situation. You needed to move like water, strike like lightning, and never, ever hesitate. Gehrman created the first trick weapons. His masterpiece, the burial blade, was an enormous curved scythe that could fold into a more compact blade. When transformed, it became a weapon of impossible reach and devastating, sweeping attacks. When retracted, it allowed for quicker movements and more precise strikes. It was revolutionary. It was beautiful. It was deadly. He established the first hunter's workshop, a place where weapons could be crafted and maintained, where techniques could be refined, where knowledge could be shared. The workshop became more than just a forge. It became a brotherhood, a gathering place for those who would take up the hunt. Gehrman trained the first generation of hunters. He taught them his techniques, his philosophy. Hunt in the cover of darkness, move silently, strike without warning, leave no trace. The hunt wasn't about glory or honor, it was about necessity. It was about protecting people from monsters they didn't even know existed. Among his students, one stood out above all others, Lady Maria of the Astral Clocktower, a noblewoman from Cainhurst who had rejected her family's blood-drinking ways to become a hunter. She wielded a weapon called the Rakuyo with grace that left Gehrman in awe. She was skilled, compassionate, noble in the truest sense, and Gehrman loved her. Whether Maria knew the depth of his feelings is unclear. Whether she returned them at all is even murkier. But Gehrman's love for Maria would shape everything that came after. It would lead him to create something that would trap him forever. The tragedy began at a place called the Fishing Hamlet, a small coastal village where Byrgenwerth's scholars went seeking knowledge of the Great Ones. What happened there haunts the lore of Bloodborne like a ghost that refuses to rest. The scholars, including Gehrman and Maria, didn't just study the hamlet. They committed atrocities. They killed the villagers. They desecrated the corpse of a great one named Kos. They orphaned her child. Maria was never the same after the fishing hamlet. The guilt destroyed something fundamental in her spirit. She cast her beloved Rakuyo into a well in that cursed place, symbolically rejecting the hunt and everything it represented. She took a position caring for patients in a research hall, perhaps seeking redemption through compassion. But redemption was impossible. The curse of the fishing hamlet followed her. Eventually, Maria took her own life. Gehrman was devastated. In his grief, he created a doll in Maria's likeness. He crafted it with incredible care and skill, capturing her appearance perfectly. He kept a small hair ornament of hers in the workshop, a treasured memento of someone who had departed. His longing for Maria bordered on obsession. But creating a lifeless doll wasn't enough. In his desperation, in his grief, in his need, Gehrman made a bargain, with whom exactly remains ambiguous, but the result was the creation of the Hunter's Dream. The Hunter's Dream is a pocket dimension, a liminal space existing between waking reality and the nightmare realms. It appears as an ethereal version of Gehrman's old workshop, surrounded by white flowers and bathed in eternal twilight. Time moves differently there, or perhaps it doesn't move at all. The doll Gehrman created was given life by a great one called the Moon Presence. Not true life, perhaps, but something close enough. She moves, she speaks, she cares for the hunters who enter the dream. Whether she possesses any memory or fragment of the real Maria's spirit is one of Bloodborne's beautiful mysteries. But this gift came at a terrible price. Gehrman became bound to the dream, trapped there, doomed to serve as its host, its caretaker, forever guiding new hunters who were brought into this space. He sits in his wheelchair, aging but never dying, watching hunter after hunter come and go. Some succeed, most die, all eventually leave, one way or another. But Gehrman remains. The dream grants hunters a form of immortality. When they die in the waking world, they awaken in the dream, restored and ready to try again. This makes them perfect servants for an endless hunt. Warriors who can throw themselves against impossible odds without permanent loss. But this resurrection comes at a cost. The hunters bound to the dream lose their connection to normal life. They can't truly rest. They're caught in a cycle of hunting, dying, and hunting again. When you meet Gehrman in the game, he's kind, encouraging. He offers advice and gentle wisdom. But underneath it all is profound weariness. He's been trapped for an unbearably long time. He's aware of his servitude but unable to escape it. When he speaks, there's sadness in every word. At the end of your hunt, Gehrman offers you a choice. He can release you from the dream, let you wake up and forget everything. It seems like mercy, like kindness. but it's also a trap. If you accept his offer, he stands from his wheelchair, reveals the burial blade, and fights you. He attacks not out of malice but out of compassion. He's trying to grant you the release he himself can never have, a mercy killing, a way out of the endless cycle. If you refuse, if you defeat him, something worse happens. The moon presence descends, the great one that created the dream appears, and if you're not prepared, it binds you to take Gehrman's place. You become the new host of the dream, trapped in his wheelchair, doomed to guide future hunters just as he did. The cycle continues. The trap closes around a new victim. Only if you've consumed 3 umbilical cords, gained enough insight to perceive the truth of reality, can you resist the moon presence. And even then, what happens next is ambiguous. You transform into something new, an infant great one. The doll cradles you gently, promising to care for you. But what have you become? Are you still you? The game doesn't answer. It lets you wonder. Gehrman's story is one of love, loss, grief, and eternal imprisonment. The first hunter became the first victim. The man who created the tools and techniques that would save Yharnam countless times became trapped in a dream that serves purposes he doesn't fully understand. He remains there still, in the garden surrounded by flowers, watching the sky, waiting for someone who can finally set him free. His dialogue when he thinks no one is listening reveals his true state. He mumbles about Lawrence, about Willem, about the old days when things made sense. He cries out for Lawrence to come free him from this nightmare. But Lawrence is long dead, transformed into the very thing he sought to prevent. No one is coming to save Gehrman. He will remain in the dream until the hunt itself ends, and the hunt never ends. Maria. Even the name carries weight, carries sorrow, carries the echo of something beautiful that was broken beyond repair. She came from Cainhurst, that isolated castle of vampire nobles who had developed their own relationship with blood long before the healing church rose to power. Cainhurst was a place of decadence and dark elegance, where aristocrats drank blood not from necessity but from tradition, from pleasure, from the belief that it made them superior to common humanity. But Maria was different. She was a distant relative of Queen Annalise herself, connected to the royal bloodline, born into privilege and power. Yet she rejected the blood arts that defined Cainhurst nobility. The description of her weapon, the rakuyo, tells us she despised blood blades despite being the queen's collateral relation. She chose skill over blood magic, technique over inherited power. Perhaps growing up in Cainhurst felt suffocating to her. How many lives did she witness snuffed out for? Depraved banquets? How much blood was she expected to drink? How many friends and family did she lose to the transformations that even noble blood could not prevent? It's easy to imagine young Maria as the one sane person in an insane world, desperate to escape, desperate to find something pure. When Gehrman came to Cainhurst, or when Maria somehow encountered the first hunter, she found what she was looking for. Here was a man who fought monsters not for sport or bloodlust, but from duty. A craftsman who had turned monster hunting into an art form based on skill and precision rather than supernatural power. Maria adored him. The word used in the original Japanese carries multiple meanings. To idolize a superior for their traits, to yearn for something lost fondly, to follow someone too hard to leave. She became one of Gehrman's first students. She trained under him, learning his techniques, adapting them to her own style. The rakuyo in her hands became an instrument of deadly grace. She was among the best hunters Gehrman ever trained, possibly the best. Her movements were like a dance, elegant and lethal, beautiful and brutal. For a time, she must have felt she'd found her purpose. She'd escaped the blood-soaked halls of Cainhurst for a noble calling. She was protecting people, fighting actual monsters, using her skills for good. She was part of something larger than herself, part of Gehrman's hunter workshop, part of the solution to Yharnam's beast problem. Then came the fishing hamlet. The scholars of Bergenworth discovered a small coastal village where a great one named Kos had washed ashore. They organised an expedition, and Maria was part of it. So was Gehrman. What they told themselves about their mission doesn't matter. What they told themselves about their intentions means nothing in the face of what they actually did. They massacred the villagers, men, women, children. They subjected survivors to experiments, treating them as specimens rather than people. They desecrated the corpse of Kos, cutting her open, studying her, violating even her pregnancy. Inside her body was a child, the orphan of Kos, either extracted by the scholars or emerging after its mother's death. Either way, a Great One's child was orphaned, traumatized, bound to its mother's violated corpse. Maria participated in this atrocity. She shed blood in that hamlet. She did things that couldn't be undone, things that couldn't be justified, things that broke something fundamental inside her. The guilt destroyed her. The woman who had fled Cainhurst's blood-soaked decadence had become part of something even worse. At least Cainhurst's nobles were open about their nature. At least they didn't pretend nobility while committing atrocities in secret. Maria had thought she was different, thought she was better. The fishing hamlet proved she was just as capable of evil as anyone. She cast the rakuyo into a well in the hamlet. The weapon she'd loved, that embodied her, skill and philosophy became too tainted to carry. Touching it reminded her of what she'd done. She returned to Yharnam and took her position in the research hall, working with patients, perhaps seeking some form of redemption through care. But you can't atone for genocide with kindness. You can't undo murder with mercy. The curse of the fishing hamlet followed Maria. It followed all who were there. And eventually, unable to bear the weight of what she'd done, Maria ended her own life. Her death didn't bring peace. In the hunter's nightmare, a realm created by the curse of the fishing hamlet, where bloodthirsty hunters are trapped in eternal torment, Maria's spirit remained. She sits before the entrance to the research hall and the path to the hamlet beyond, appearing as a corpse slumped in a chair. When you approach her, when you examine what appears to be her lifeless body, she grabs your hand. A corpse should be left well alone, she says. Her voice is sad, weary, resigned. She knows what you're seeking. She knows you want to reach the fishing hamlet to discover its secrets. She can't allow it. She fights you desperately, not from malice, but from a desire to protect, to prevent anyone else from disturbing that cursed place. The fight with Lady Maria is one of Bloodborne's most striking encounters. She uses the rakuyo with incredible skill, moving with impossible speed and grace. But as the fight progresses, as you push her further, she does something significant. She stabs herself in the chest with her own weapon, coating it in her blood. This is enormous. Maria despised blood arts. It's part of why she left Cainhurst. Yet in the nightmare, in death, fighting to protect the hamlet from further violation, she uses the very blood magic she spent her life rejecting. It shows how desperately she wants to stop you. It shows that even her principles have been eroded by death and guilt. When you defeat her, when you strike her down for the final time, her last words are a whisper about her failure. Even given the chance to stand guard over the hamlet in death, she fails again. The tragedy is circular, eternal, inescapable. Back in the hunter's dream, the doll sometimes speaks of Maria. If you give her the small hair ornament found in Gehrman's workshop, she has a powerful emotional reaction. Tears form. She speaks of feelings she can't name, of yearning, of joy, as if some fragment of the real Maria recognizes this treasured keepsake and remembers being cared for, being loved. When you defeat Maria's spirit in the nightmare, the doll comments that Gehrman is sleeping soundly for the first time in ages, as if freeing Maria from her eternal vigil somehow brings Gehrman peace. The connection between them transcends death, transcends dreams, transcends even the cosmic forces that bind them both. Maria's story is about guilt that can't be absolved, about discovering you're capable of evil when you thought yourself good, about trying to protect others from the consequences of sins you participated in. She fled one blood-soaked life only to become party to something worse. She sought redemption but found none. She died and couldn't even rest. She guards a place she failed to protect in life, knowing she'll fail to protect it in death too. Her tragedy is that she was genuinely good. She genuinely cared. She had principles, values, a desire to do right. But good intentions don't prevent atrocity. Noble ideals don't undo murder. And sometimes, no matter how much you regret what you've done, no matter how desperately you wish you could change it, the past remains unchangeable and guilt remains unforgivable. Before we continue deeper into the tales of Yharnam's hunters, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being here, for listening, for sharing this journey through Bloodborne's darkest corners. Whether you're still awake, hanging on every detail of these tragic stories, or already drifting into dreams, I appreciate you. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the hunters of Bloodborne, I'd be grateful if you'd like and subscribe. It helps more than you know and tells me these long-form explorations are valuable to you. And if you have a favourite hunter or a character you'd love to hear more about, leave a comment. I read everyone, and they often inspire future videos. Now, let's continue our journey through the blood-soaked streets of Yharnam. There are hunters who survive through skill. There are hunters who survive through cunning. And then there are hunters who survive through absolute unwavering conviction that they are doing holy work. Ludwig was the latter, and his conviction would elevate him to legendary status before destroying him utterly. Ludwig came after Gehrman had established the basics of hunting, after the first workshop had been founded, after the techniques had been refined. But the beast scourge was growing worse, not better. More people were transforming. The hunts were becoming more frequent, more desperate. Gehrman's approach, while effective, required extensive training and natural talent. Not everyone could master his techniques. The healing church needed a solution. They needed hunters who could be trained more quickly, who could use weapons that didn't require years of practice, who could function as an actual army rather than an elite few. They needed someone to revolutionize the hunt. Ludwig stepped forward. We don't know much about Ludwig's life before he became a hunter. He may have been a scholar at Bergenworth. He may have been a blood minister in the early days of the Healing Church. What we do know is that he possessed something Gehrman's hunters lacked: mass appeal. Ludwig didn't just hunt beasts, he inspired others to join him. His approach differed fundamentally from Gehrman's philosophy. Where Gehrman emphasized speed and secrecy, hunting in darkness so citizens wouldn't know the full extent of the scourge, Ludwig embraced visibility. He created hunter's attire designed for straightforward defense rather than mobility. He recruited ordinary Yharnam citizens to become hunters. He made the hunt visible, official, heroic. Most significantly, Ludwig changed the weapons. Gehrman's trick weapons required exceptional skill to master. The burial blade, the blade of mercy, the rakuyo, these were weapons for artists of death, for those with natural talent and years of training. Ludwig needed weapons that could be used by regular people. He introduced weapons like the Kirk hammer and his own holy blade. These could transform into massive, heavy weapons that didn't require dexterity so much as determination. You didn't need to be graceful or quick. You just needed to be strong enough to swing them and committed enough to hit your target. The lack of finesse required meant hunters could be trained faster, deployed sooner. The Healing Church workshop was established under Ludwig's direction. It differed from Gehrman's original workshop in design and philosophy, emphasizing production over artistry, functionality over elegance. Ludwig was creating an army, not training individual masters, and he succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. Ludwig became legendary. The common people loved him. He was their protector, their champion, the symbol of hope that the hunt could be won. His tactical approach emphasized straightforward courage and holy purpose. He believed deeply in the righteousness of the hunt, in the nobility of defending humanity against monsters. But Ludwig possessed something else, something that elevated him beyond mere skill or popularity. He possessed a sword, the Holy Moonlight Sword. This weapon wasn't created by human hands. Its description tells us it channels the abyssal cosmos, that its great blade hurls a shadowy light wave. It's unclear how Ludwig obtained this sword. Perhaps he found it deep in the Chalice dungeons during church expeditions into those ancient Thumerian depths. Perhaps it was given to him by a Great One. Perhaps the moon presence itself, the same entity that gave life to the doll in the hunter's dream, granted Ludwig this weapon as a tool. The sword offered Ludwig guidance. It spoke to him after a fashion. Or perhaps Ludwig interpreted its cosmic emanations as guidance. Either way, the Holy Moonlight Sword became synonymous with Ludwig. It was his most treasured possession, kept close, shown to very few. He possessed a special relationship with it that others couldn't share. His motto, his philosophy, came to define an entire generation of hunters. Those who followed him were called Holy Blades, heirs to an ancient line of heroes from an age of honor and chivalry. Ludwig looked back to earlier times, to stories of knights and noble purpose, and tried to embody those ideals in the horror of Yharnam. For a while, it worked. Ludwig and his Holy Blades fought the beasts. They protected the citizens. They gave people hope that the scourge could be managed, that Yharnam could survive this nightmare. Ludwig was a hero in the truest sense, beloved by the people, respected by his peers, the greatest hunter after Gehrman himself. But the old blood that gave hunters their strength and speed also transformed them. No one was immune to the scourge. Not ordinary citizens, not skilled hunters, not even legends. Ludwig eventually succumbed to the transformation, despite his purity of purpose, despite his holy conviction, despite everything he believed and fought for. The blood changed him. He became a beast. But not a wolf or dog like most transformations. Ludwig became something else, something worse. In the hunter's nightmare, that realm of eternal torment where bloodthirsty hunters are trapped, Ludwig exists in his beast form. He's called Ludwig the Accursed, and his appearance is horrific. His lower body is thin, flayed, sporting 4 asymmetrical hoofed legs. His upper torso is pure madness. Between 2 long arms protrudes a disproportionate hunch, with a circular maw lined with irregular teeth and clusters of eyes. His face is a melted visage of wrinkled skin and crooked teeth, stretched over an elongated head vaguely resembling a horse. He's one of the most disturbing boss fights in the game. Ludwig the Accursed crawls through a channel of blood and corpses, savage, mindless, attacking with pure bestial fury. There's no trace of the noble knight, the holy warrior, the champion of humanity, just a monster. But halfway through the fight, something changes. Ludwig's gaze falls upon the holy moonlight sword, still present in the nightmare. Upon seeing it, something stirs in his beast-addled mind. Memories, purpose, identity. He grasps the sword and a transformation occurs. The beast straightens up. The chaos resolves into controlled violence. Ludwig stands tall, wielding his beloved sword, and for the duration of the fight he's the Holy Blade again. Ludwig, the Holy Blade. The second phase of the fight. He's still a beast in form, but he fights with technique, with purpose, with the skill that made him legendary. He uses the sword's arcane powers, hurling waves of light, creating shock waves, fighting like the knight he always aspired to be. It's beautiful and tragic simultaneously. For these moments, Ludwig remembers who he was. The sword grants him that mercy. But it's only temporary, only an illusion. When you defeat him, the truth crashes down. After the fight, if you approach Ludwig's severed head, he can speak. He asks about the church hunters. Did they maintain their honor? Did they fight nobly? Did the sacrifices mean something? If you're wearing church attire and you tell him yes, that the hunters remained noble, he finds peace. He dies believing his legacy endured, that his suffering wasn't meaningless. The holy moonlight sword remains for you to claim, his final gift to a fellow hunter. If you tell him no, or if you're wearing other attire, he learns the truth, that the church fell into corruption, that hunters became as bloodthirsty as beasts, that everything he fought for was ultimately futile. He wails incoherently, overcome with despair, dying with the knowledge that his life's work was wasted. Ludwig's story is about faith betrayed by reality, about believing so deeply in ideals that you're blind to their flaws. He wanted to be a knight from stories, fighting for honor and righteousness, but Yharnam wasn't a fairy tale. The beasts weren't dragons. The healing church wasn't actually holy, and the blood he championed, the blood that gave him strength, the blood he offered to countless others, transformed him into the very thing he dedicated his life to destroying. His conviction was real. His desire to help was genuine. His belief in the righteousness of his cause was absolute, and none of it mattered. The blood transformed him anyway. The scourge claimed him anyway. His legendary status couldn't save him. His holy purpose couldn't protect him. He became the accursed, a monster in a nightmare. remembered more for what he became than what he was. The holy moonlight sword remains, the weapon that guided him, that gave him purpose, that elevated him to legendary status. It survives when its wielder does not, and perhaps that's the final tragedy. The sword endures while the man is forgotten, his beast form more recognizable than his human achievements, his failure more memorable than his success. Not all hunters hunt beasts. Some understand that the greatest threat to Yharnam doesn't have fur or fangs. The greatest threat wears familiar faces, carries weapons meant for protection, and loses themselves to the intoxication of the hunt itself. These hunters require a different kind of predator. They require someone willing to do what's necessary, no matter how painful. They require a hunter of hunters. Eileen the Crow is ancient by hunter standards. Her voice carries the weight of countless years, countless hunts, countless deaths. She hails from a foreign land where they performed sky burials to honor the dead, and she brought that tradition of respect to Yharnam. But respect for the dead doesn't prevent killing. Sometimes respect demands it. You first encounter Eileen in central Yharnam, hidden away in the rafters near the sewers. She's watching the streets below, observing the chaos, evaluating threats. When she speaks to you, her words are measured, careful. She gives you warnings, advice, gestures that might save your life. But she's also evaluating you, determining whether you're hunter material or another blood-drunk madman waiting to happen. A hunter should hunt beasts, she tells you. Leave the hunting of hunters to me. This is her purpose. This is her burden. When hunters lose themselves to the intoxication of the hunt, when they become so addicted to violence that they can't distinguish between protecting people and slaughtering them, Eileen ends them. It's not murder, it's mercy, it's necessity, it's the duty no one else will accept. She wields the blade of mercy, a weapon that splits into two curved blades. They're weapons of elegance and precision, requiring incredible skill. The name itself tells you everything about Eileen's philosophy. When she kills a hunter, she's showing mercy, freeing them from blood-drunk madness, preventing them from causing more harm, ending suffering. But mercy killing is still killing, and Eileen has done it many, many times. Her first real test for you comes at the Tomb of Eden, where Father Gascoigne fell. She's hunting an old hunter named Henrik, a veteran who's succumbed to blood drunkenness. Henrik is dangerous, skilled, experienced. He wears yellow garb and fights with brutal efficiency. Eileen knows he needs to die, but she also knows she's getting old. She can't be sure she'll succeed alone. You can help her. The fight is frantic, chaotic. Henrik is vicious, and in the confusion, it's easy to accidentally strike Eileen herself. If you do, she becomes hostile. If Henrik kills her, the quest line ends. But if you help her succeed, if you don't betray her even accidentally, something changes. She begins to trust you, to see you as different from other hunters, as someone who might actually maintain control. You're a skilled hunter, she says after Henrik falls, adept at striking down your prey. But remember, the hunter must hunt beasts. Leave the hunting of hunters to me. It's a warning and a compliment simultaneously. You're good at what you do. Too good. That's dangerous. Most hunters who excel at killing eventually can't stop. They become exactly what Henrik was. She's watching you, evaluating whether you'll succumb to the same madness. Later, after the blood moon rises and reality shifts, Eileen faces her greatest challenge. the Bloody Crow of Cainhurst. This hunter represents everything Eileen fights against. Skilled, yes. Deadly, absolutely. But completely consumed by bloodlust. He wields Chikaj, a Cainhurst blood blade, and fights with a combination of skill and savage brutality that makes him one of the most dangerous opponents in the game. He uses the environment expertly, heals aggressively, and fights with no honor, no restraint, no humanity left. Eileen knows she can't defeat him. She's too old, too worn down by years of this work. So she positions herself at the Grand Cathedral's entrance, wounded, bleeding. She warns you not to go inside. She knows the Bloody Crow is there. She knows you'll try to fight him. She knows you'll probably die. But you don't listen. Hunters never do. If you defeat the Bloody Crow, if you somehow manage to put down this ultimate expression of blood-drunk madness, Eileen gives you her final gifts. The Crow Hunter badge, the Hunter rune, access to her covenant, the Hunters of Hunters. She acknowledges that her time is over, that her watch has ended, that someone younger and stronger needs to carry on this burden. Whether she dies or simply disappears after this is ambiguous. The game doesn't show her corpse, she just fades. Perhaps finally granted rest. Perhaps continuing her vigil elsewhere. Perhaps succumbing to the very blood-drunkenness she fought against her entire life. That last possibility haunts the quest line, because if you miss certain triggers, if you don't follow the precise sequence of events, Eileen herself becomes hostile at the Grand Cathedral. Instead of the Bloody Crow, you fight her, and she attacks with the same blood-drunk fury she spent her life hunting in others. Few hunters can resist the intoxication of the hunt. Eileen warned you of this. She told you what happens, and in some timelines she proves her own point by falling to the same madness. The Hunter of Hunters becomes what she hunted. The Mercy Killer requires Mercy herself. But if you complete her questline properly, if you help her succeed in her final hunt, there's a bittersweet peace. She passes her responsibility to you. The cycle continues, the hunt never ends, but individuals can find rest. Eileen, the old crow, finally stops fighting, finally lays down her burden, finally accepts that she's done enough. Her story is about the price of doing what's necessary, about maintaining your humanity while regularly killing those who've lost theirs, about staying sane in an insane world by focusing on a clear moral mission. Hunter of Hunters. It's a lonely covenant, a thankless task, a burden that weighs on the soul. Most hunters would never accept it. They'd rather hunt beasts where the morality is clear. But Eileen understood the truth. Beasts are tragic, yes, victims of the blood, transformed against their will, but they were already lost when transformation occurred. Blood-drunk hunters, though, they chose their path. They let the thrill of violence consume them. They became monsters while still wearing human faces, carrying human weapons, remembering human thoughts. They're more dangerous because they're more calculating, more tragic because they were once companions, and someone has to stop them. Someone has to care enough to do the terrible work of putting them down. Eileen accepted that burden. She carried it for decades, and when she finally couldn't anymore, she found someone else to carry it forward. The hunt continues. The hunters hunt. Some become beasts, some become blood-drunk, and the Hunters of Hunters put them down, one by one, showing mercy the only way. They can, through death, through ending the nightmare for those too lost to end it themselves. Some hunters break from killing beasts. Others break from watching what happens to those beasts, from recognizing that under the fur and fangs are people, your neighbors, your friends, your family. From understanding that the hunt itself is the problem, that hunting creates more hunters who need to be hunted in an endless, futile cycle that solves nothing. Djura broke differently than most. He was an old hunter, a contemporary of Gehrman, distinguished by his association with a faction called the Powder Kegs. These were the heretics of the workshop, hunters who rejected traditional designs in favour of complex mechanisms and overwhelming firepower. Their motto, "If a weapon ain't got kick, it just ain't worth it." Djura wielded the stake driver, a bizarre weapon that violently drives stakes into the flesh of foes using explosive force. It's difficult to use, leaves the wielder vulnerable, but delivers devastating damage when it connects. It's a powder keg weapon through and through, impractical, over-engineered, absurdly powerful. But Djura's story isn't really about his weapon or his fighting style. It's about what he witnessed, what he participated in, and what he decided to do about it. Old Yharnam was once just Yharnam. Before central Yharnam was built, before the grand cathedral rose, Old Yharnam was the main city, home to thousands of people, a community with families, businesses, lives. Then the ashen blood sickness came. It wasn't quite the beast scourge, or maybe it was an early form. The descriptions are ambiguous, but it transformed people, turned them savage, made them dangerous. The infection spread faster in Old Yharnam than anywhere else. The transformations accelerated. Soon, the infected outnumbered the healthy. The healing church made a decision. They would contain the outbreak through the most brutal means possible. They would burn Old Yharnam to the ground. Djura was there for the burning. He participated in it. The powder kegs, with their love of explosives and fire, were perfect for the job. They sealed the exits, set the fires, and ensured nothing escaped. Men, women, children, beast and human alike, all consumed by the flames. The church's justification was containment. Sacrifice this district to save the rest of the city. But Djura saw the truth. Many of those who burned weren't beasts at all. They were simply residents of Old Yharnam, guilty only of living in the wrong place at the wrong time. The church killed them preemptively, out of fear rather than necessity. This atrocity accomplished its immediate goal. Old Yharnam was sterilized, but it failed in every other respect. The scourge continued elsewhere. The burning didn't stop the transformations. It just proved the church's willingness to murder its own citizens. Djura couldn't accept this. He'd participated in mass murder justified as necessity. He'd helped burn people alive because they might transform. The horror of it, the pointlessness of it, broke something in him. He returned to the ruins of Old Yharnam and took up vigil there. He climbed to the top of the old church's tower, set up a Gatling gun, and made a decision. He would protect what remained. The beasts still roaming the charred district, they were victims. People who didn't deserve the additional cruelty of being hunted in their afflicted state. The hunts are over, he warns any hunter who approaches, and tonight, Gehrman joins the hunt. Wait, that's not his line. Let me correct that. You're not wanted here, he warns. Turn back. He shoots at you with his Gatling gun if you persist. Not to kill necessarily, though he certainly could. To warn. To drive you away. To protect the beasts from hunters who can't see them as anything but targets. Djura came to understand what others couldn't or wouldn't. The beast scourge is circular. Hunters hunt beasts. Hunters ingest blood to gain strength. The blood eventually transforms hunters into beasts, who are then hunted by new hunters. It's a cycle that perpetuates itself, that creates the very problem it claims to solve. In the face of this realization, Djura could do nothing else but feel defeated. He renounced his hunter's vows. He gave up the hunt, not because he was afraid, not because he lacked skill, but because he recognized the fundamental futility of it all. His gear reflects this. He wears the Ashen Hunter set, painted with ash in a ceremony to ward off blood. It's a superstition perhaps, but one that shows his awareness of the danger. He's seen hunters transform. He knows blood is the vector, so he takes symbolic precautions, even knowing they probably won't help. He also wears a covering over his right eye. Some believe he deliberately injured or removed his eye to avoid being drawn into the hunter's nightmare, that realm where blood-drunk hunters are trapped. The eye of a blood-drunk hunter is the key to accessing that nightmare. So perhaps Djura thought removing his eye would protect him. Whether it actually works is doubtful, but the attempt speaks to his awareness of the trap hunter's face. He has companions, 3 others who share his vigil, who've also renounced their vows, who protect the beasts of old Yharnam rather than hunt them. One guards the base of his tower, another can be found in the hunter's nightmare, suggesting they eventually succumb to blood drunkenness despite their intentions. The youngest used a Gatling gun like Djura's, wielded in mobile form rather than mounted. Djura is described as both uncommonly kind and dreadfully foolish. These traits work together. His kindness makes him see beasts as victims deserving protection. His foolishness blinds him to the danger they still pose. He's defending creatures that would kill him without hesitation if he came down from his tower. His compassion for their plight doesn't make them less dangerous, yet there's something admirable in his stance. In a city where everyone else sees only monsters to be destroyed, Djura sees people, afflicted people, yes, dangerous people certainly, but still people underneath the transformation, still worthy of some measure of dignity, some basic right to exist without being hunted down and burned. You can befriend Djura if you approach old Yharnam from the back after encountering Darkbeast Parl. If you reach his tower without killing any beasts in his sight, if you show you're willing to spare them, he'll speak to you peacefully. He'll give you the Powder Keg Hunter badge. He'll trust you to honor the beast's existence, but it's a fragile peace. If you later kill beasts in old Yharnam, if you attack anything near his tower, the agreement breaks. He mans his Gatling gun again. Trust destroyed. The war resumes. Djura's story is about drawing a line and refusing to cross it, even when crossing would be easier. About recognizing when the cure has become worse than the disease. About choosing compassion over efficiency, even when compassion seems foolish. Most hunters can't understand him. They see him as a traitor, an obstacle, someone who's lost his mind. They can't comprehend protecting beasts, but Djura sees further than they do. He understands the tragedy of the situation. He knows the beasts were people. He knows the hunt creates more problems than it solves. He knows that in fighting monsters, Yharnam has become monstrous. So he sits atop his tower, old and weary, protecting victims from hunters who only see prey. It's a lonely vigil, a thankless task, a position that makes enemies of former allies. But Djura maintains it anyway, because someone has to. Someone has to remember that the beast were human once, someone has to care. His message is simple. The hunt is cyclical. The hunt is futile. The hunt creates more hunters who will eventually need to be hunted, and the only way to break the cycle is to stop hunting, to show mercy, to protect rather than destroy, even if it seems dreadfully foolish to everyone else. Where Gehrman created elegance and Ludwig established nobility, the Powder Kegs brought explosive chaos. They were the heretics of the workshop, the rebels, the ones who looked at traditional trick weapons and said, "These are boring." They wanted weapons with kick, weapons with impact, weapons that made statement. If the traditional workshop favoured grace and technique, the Powder Kegs favoured brute force and spectacular violence. Their philosophy traced back to a man named Otto. He established the Otto Workshop, the predecessor to the Powder Kegs, where he could experiment with complex mechanisms and unusual designs without church oversight. Otto created weapons like the piercing rifle, designed specifically for shooting beasts down narrow streets, and the delayed Molotov, a needlessly complex explosive that wedged into the ground and exploded on a timer. These weapons were impractical by traditional standards. Why create a Molotov that requires complex mechanisms when a simple bottle of oil and fire works fine? Because boring weapons aren't worth making. Because efficiency isn't the only consideration. Because sometimes you want to watch something explode. Otto gathered like-minded hunters around him. People tired of the church's direction under Ludwig. People who wanted to create rather than follow. The Otto Workshop grew, reconstituted itself as something broader. They adopted the Powder Keg as their symbol. Otto was the firing hammer. They were the gunpowder he ignited. The Powder Kegs developed a reputation. They created weapons that departed radically from workshop designs. The stake driver, Djura's weapon, that drives explosive stakes into flesh. The rifle spear, a simple combination of firearm and spear. The boom hammer, a giant hammer with a miniature furnace that ignites and explodes furiously on impact. The whirligig saw, mechanical saws that spin rapidly, thrashing beasts into fine shreds. The cannon, a portable artillery piece with ridiculous weight, staggering kick, and lavish use of quicksilver bullets. These weapons were excessive, impractical, difficult to use, but they were effective in ways traditional weapons weren't. You didn't need years of training to swing a boom hammer. You didn't need precision footwork to fire a cannon. You just needed strength, determination, and willingness to embrace absurdity. The church labelled them workshop heretics. It seems harsh. They just had different design philosophy, but heretic suggests something deeper. Perhaps the Powder Kegs rejected more than just weapon designs. Perhaps they rejected the church's authority, its claim to control how beasts should be hunted, its insistence that hunters serve church purposes rather than their own convictions. We know the Powder Kegs participated in the burning of old Yharnam. Their love of fire and explosives made them perfect for that horrible task. But we also know several Powder Kegs came to regret it deeply. Djura is the most obvious example, but his companions share his protectiveness toward old Yharnam's beasts. Even the Gatling gun hunter in The Hunter's Nightmare wears charred hunter garb, indicating presence at the burning. This suggests a pattern. The Powder Kegs participated in church-sanctioned atrocities, then renounced their allegiance. They became heretics not through different weapon preferences, but through moral disagreement. They saw what the church was willing to do and said no. They drew a line. The description of the Powder Keg Hunter badge says, "The late Powder Kegs, bless their souls with genuine respect. Not the mockery you'd expect for heretics. Whoever wrote that description, perhaps a church official, recognized the Powder Kegs deserved better than they received. What happened to the Powder Kegs as an organization isn't entirely clear. They scattered. Djura returned to old Yharnam. Others disappeared into the various hunter factions. Some probably transformed into beasts, some probably ended up in the hunter's nightmare. But as a unified workshop, they ceased to exist. Their legacy endures in their weapons. Every Powder Keg creation screams its philosophy. More impact, more destruction, more memorable death. They represent an approach to the hunt that rejects subtlety in favour of spectacular violence. Not elegant, not noble, just devastatingly, absurdly, wonderfully effective. The Powder Kegs understood something important. The hunt wasn't about grace or honour, it was about survival. It was about killing things that wanted to kill you. And if you're going to do that, you might as well do it with style, might as well make it memorable, might as well embrace the chaos. Their story is about creative rebellion, about refusing to accept that there's only one right way to do things, about combining functionality with personality, making weapons that reflect their creators' attitudes, about being called heretics for thinking differently and wearing that label proudly. If a weapon ain't got kick, it just ain't worth it. That's their motto, their philosophy, their legacy, and every hunter who picks up a boom hammer, who fires a stake driver, who unleashes a cannon's devastating blast, channels the Powder Keg spirit. Excessive, impractical, glorious, worth it. Not all hunters were independent operators or workshop members. The Healing Church established its own hunting force, warriors who served church interests directly. These weren't just beast hunters, they were enforcers, protectors, soldiers of a religious institution that wielded tremendous power in Yharnam. The church hunters wore distinctive garb, black or white outfits depending on their role. The black-clad hunters were the foot soldiers, the ones who actually went into the streets to fight beasts. The white-clad hunters were blood ministers, medical practitioners who administered the blood ministration that was supposedly healing Yharnam while actually creating the beast they hunted. This was this central hypocrisy. The Healing Church created the problem they claimed to solve. Their blood ministration transformed people into beasts. Their hunters then killed those beasts. And they continued offering blood ministration to new people, perpetuating the cycle. They knew the truth. They understood the cost. They continued anyway because stopping would mean admitting their entire foundation was built on a mistake. Ludwig founded the Healing Church Workshop and became the first official church hunter. His approach revolutionized how the church dealt with the scourge. Where Gehrman's hunters operated in shadows, Ludwig made the hunt visible and heroic. Where Gehrman's methods required extensive training, Ludwig created systems that allowed ordinary people to become effective hunters quickly. The church hunters followed Ludwig's model. They wore armor that emphasized defense over mobility. They wielded weapons like Ludwig's Holy Blade and the Kirk Hammer, massive tools that dealt devastating damage without requiring exceptional skill. They recruited from Yharnam's population, turning citizens into soldiers. For a time, this approach seemed successful. The church hunters protected the city. They gave people hope. They created the illusion that the scourge could be managed. Ludwig's name became synonymous with righteous purpose and holy mission. But underneath the pageantry, The church hunters served darker purposes. They guarded church secrets. They protected church facilities from intrusion. They dealt with anyone who threatened church authority. They weren't just fighting beasts, they were maintaining an institution built on lies and death. The church hunters' ultimate loyalty was to the church itself, not to the people of Yharnam. When the church ordered old Yharnam burned, church hunters carried out that command. When the church experimented on orphans in the research hall, church hunters guarded the facility. When the church needed to silence witnesses or eliminate rivals, church hunters handled it. Some church hunters were true believers like Ludwig, genuinely convinced they were doing holy work. Others were simply following orders, serving an institution that had given them purpose and power. And some likely knew exactly what they were, part of and didn't care, content to maintain their position regardless of the cost. The description of church garb mentions that the church produced the most hideous beasts of all. This isn't surprising. The church handled more old blood than anyone. Their members underwent blood ministration more frequently. Their experiments with blood were more extensive. The very people who claimed authority over blood healing were most susceptible to its corrupting influence. Ludwig's transformation exemplifies this. The greatest church hunter, the Holy Blade himself, became Ludwig the Accursed. His beast form is among the most disturbing in the game. The man who inspired a generation of church hunters proved that even absolute faith couldn't protect against the blood's effects. Other church hunters met similar fates. They transformed, became what they hunted, died as monsters, or were killed by their former comrades. The cycle consumed its own participants. The institution that created and sustained them ultimately destroyed them. Some church hunters appear in the Hunter's Nightmare, that realm of eternal torment for blood-drunk warriors. Their presence suggests they succumbed to the hunt's intoxication, became so obsessed with killing that they crossed moral lines. Or perhaps they were sent there for the atrocities they committed in the church's name. The burning of old Yharnam alone would justify eternal punishment. The church established internal hierarchies and specialized orders. The healing church hunters were the visible force, the ones citizens saw. But deeper within the organization were groups like the Choir and the School of Mensis, scholarly orders pursuing more esoteric goals. These groups conducted their own experiments, had their own guards, operated with more secrecy. The church hunters who protected these inner sanctums weren't fighting beasts. They were preventing knowledge from spreading. They were maintaining secrecy. They were guarding experiments that would horrify ordinary citizens if discovered. Their role was less about protection and more about control. This distinction matters. The church hunters walking the streets genuinely believed they were helping. They saw themselves as protectors, defenders, heroes. But the church hunters guarding the research hall or the choir's chambers knew differently. They understood what their institution actually did. They chose to serve it anyway. The church's power ultimately declined. The scourge continued despite their efforts. Ludwig fell. Secrets emerged. The blood moon rose, revealing truths that had been hidden. By the time the player character arrives in Yharnam, the healing church's authority has crumbled. Its hunters are scattered, transformed, dead, or lost in nightmares. But their legacy remains. The weapons they used, the tactics they developed, the systems they established. Every hunter in Yharnam carries some influence from the church hunters, even those who never swore. allegiance to the institution. Ludwig's revolution changed how people approached the hunt, and that change endures even after the church itself has fallen. The story of the church hunters is about institutions that claim noble purpose while committing atrocities, about following orders without questioning their morality, about maintaining power structures that harm the very people they claim to protect, about the difference between believing you're doing good and actually doing good. They were hunters, that much is clear. But what exactly they were hunting, beasts, heretics, inconvenient truths, varied depending on the church's needs at any given moment, and in serving those needs, they became part of something monstrous. Even when their individual intentions were pure, their collective actions were damning. While most hunters focused on beasts, one faction had a different target. The executioners hunted Vilebloods. They hunted the nobles of Cainhurst Castle, who had embraced corrupted blood and become something the Healing Church deemed heretical, and they pursued this mission with religious fervour that bordered on madness. The executioners were founded after a scholar of Bergenworth brought tainted blood to Cainhurst. This blood transformed the nobles who accepted it, giving them vampiric qualities and powers. The Healing Church saw this as competition, as corruption, as a threat to their monopoly on blood ministration. So they declared the Vilebloods heretical and formed a specialized group to eliminate them. Master Logarius led the executioners. He was a man of absolute conviction, wielding the Logarius wheel, a bizarre weapon that looked more like a torture device than a hunting tool. The wheel crushed the Vilebloods, was stained in copious blood, became clad in their grudges. It was a weapon designed not just to kill, but to humiliate, to degrade, to inflict maximum suffering. The executioners had their own workshop, a secretive enclave where they crafted weapons and honed their skills. Their philosophy was simple. Acts of goodness are not always wise, and acts of evil are not always foolish. This moral flexibility allowed them to justify anything. Genocide wasn't evil if it served a righteous cause. Torture wasn't wrong if it punished the corrupt. The ends justified any means. Logarius led his band of executioners to Cainhurst Castle in a massive assault. They stormed the aristocratic stronghold, fought through the Vileblood Knights, slaughtered everyone they could find. It was brutal, savage, total. The castle's halls ran red with blood. Ironic, given that blood was what everyone was fighting over. But Queen Annalise, the undying monarch of the Vilebloods, couldn't be killed. The executioners tried. Logarius himself surely attempted it, but Annalise possessed true immortality. Not the resurrection of the hunter's dream, but actual inability to die. Cutting her down accomplished nothing. She would simply revive. Faced with this impossibility, Logarius made a decision. He would seal the queen away. He would guard the entrance to her chamber. He would don the crown of illusions that revealed hidden paths and use it to block access instead. Then he positioned himself on the roof of Cainhurst Castle, wearing the crown, wielding his weapons, and waited. He waited for decades, maybe longer. His body slowly died, decaying, turning into little more than an animated corpse. But his will never wavered. His determination never faltered. He maintained his vigil through sheer force of conviction, becoming what the game calls a martyr, someone who suffered and died for their faith, but couldn't stop. Even death couldn't stop them. The other executioners left. They escaped after the battle, believing Logarius had made his sacrifice so they could survive. But they also abandoned him, left him alone on that frozen roof to maintain eternal watch. Whether this was his choice or their cowardice is unclear. What's clear is that Logarius became a lonely sentinel, guarding a seal that locked away a queen who couldn't die but could be prevented from ruling. When you encounter Logarius as a boss, he's terrifying. He wields dual weapons, a scythe and a dagger with incredible skill. He casts arcane spells, summons flying swords, creates magical barriers. He fights with the skill of a legendary hunter, combined with supernatural powers granted by years of communion with dark forces. He's fast, aggressive, unpredictable. One of the game's most challenging fights. Defeating him breaks the seal. The Crown of Illusions becomes available, revealing the hidden entrance to Annalise's throne room. But victory feels hollow. Logarius fought to prevent exactly this outcome. You've undone his eternal sacrifice, rendered his decades of suffering meaningless, and his corpse continues sitting there on the roof, a monument to futile dedication. You can take Logarius's story further through Alfred's questline. Alfred is the last known executioner, a young hunter who idolizes Logarius and dreams of finishing what the executioners started. If you give Alfred the invitation to Canehurst, he travels there and finds Annalise. What Alfred does to the Queen is horrific. You find her afterward, pulped into a mess of flesh and organs, barely recognizable as having once been human. Alfred beat her to death with his wheel, then kept beating, grinding her into paste. His dialogue after this act reveals a man who's completely lost himself to fanatic purpose. He laughs maniacally, proclaims his mission accomplished, then returns to his original position and kills himself. But even this doesn't work. Annalise revives. Her flesh reconstitutes. You can bring her back to her throne room. The Vilebloods aren't ended. They can't be ended. Alfred's entire mission, his idol's sacrifice, the executioner's genocide, all futile. The immortal queen survives them all. The executioner's story is about zealotry that justifies atrocity, about following a mission so blindly that you don't question whether the mission itself is right, about dedicating your life to defeating something that can't be defeated and refusing to accept that truth. They called the Vilebloods corrupt. But the Vilebloods just wanted to exist, to pursue their own relationship with blood without church interference. They weren't attacking Yharnam. They weren't spreading the scourge. They were isolated in their castle, following their own traditions. The real corruption was deciding they needed to be exterminated for the crime of being different. Logarius sits on that roof, a martyr to a cause that didn't need martyrs, a guardian of a seal that only delayed the inevitable, a warrior so committed to his mission that death itself couldn't release him from duty. And for what? To prevent people from worshipping a queen in a castle that posed no threat to anyone outside its walls? The executioners believed they were righteous. They believed their violence was justified. They believed eliminating corruption was worth any price. And in pursuing that belief, they committed atrocities that far exceeded anything the Vilebloods ever did. It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of absolute certainty, of believing so strongly in your righteousness that you can't see your own evil, about mistaking violence for justice, genocide for duty, fanaticism for faith, about serving institutions that claim moral authority while committing immoral acts. The wheel turns, grudges accumulate, blood stains everything, and the executioners, certain of their righteousness, became exactly what they claimed to fight against: monsters wearing human faces, corrupted by their own pursuit of purity. On the other side of the executioner's crusade stood the Vilebloods, the Knights of Cainhurst, the servants of an immortal queen, warriors who embraced corrupted blood and developed their own martial traditions independent of Gehrman's workshop or the Healing Church. Cainhurst Castle predates the Healing Church by significant margins. It was a seat of old nobility, aristocrats who had maintained power through generations. When the Healing Church rose and began their blood ministration, Cainhurst's nobles were intrigued, but they didn't want to submit to church authority. They wanted power on their own terms. A scholar of Byrgenwerth, always the scholars causing problems, brought forbidden knowledge to Cainhurst. Tainted blood, corrupted blood, blood that transformed differently than the church's old blood. The nobles accepted this gift eagerly. They drank it, incorporated it into their practices, developed techniques around it. This transformed them, not into beasts, but into something else. The church called them Vilebloods, a derogatory term. They became vampiric, blood-drinking aristocrats with supernatural abilities. They developed bloodblade techniques, weapons coated in their own blood that gained extended reach and devastating power. They embraced this transformation, saw it as elevation rather than corruption. The Vilebloods developed their own hunting style, where Gehrman emphasized speed and Ludwig emphasized holy purpose. The Vilebloods emphasized elegance and skill. They wielded weapons like the shikag, a katana that transformed by drawing the wielder's blood along its blade, and the retapalash, a rapier with an attached firearm. These were weapons of finesse, requiring technical mastery rather than brute strength. Lady Maria came from Cainhurst before joining Gehrman's hunters. She was a distant relative of Queen Annalise herself, connected to the royal bloodline. But she rejected the blood arts that defined Cainhurst's nobility, choosing skill-based combat instead. Her departure suggests not everyone in Cainhurst was comfortable with the blood-drinking traditions. Queen Annalise ruled Cainhurst, and rules still in the game's present. She's immortal in the truest sense. You can reduce her to pulped flesh, and she'll revive. You can destroy her body completely and she'll reconstitute. She can't be killed by any method available to you. This immortality came from the corrupted blood, from techniques developed over generations, from some fundamental alteration in her nature. Annalise seeks to bear a child of blood. Not a normal child, but something that would represent the perfection of vile blood arts. She invites worthy individuals to become her knights, to bring her dregs, remnants of blood from powerful enemies, particularly from hunters. This quest mirrors the Great One's own desire for children, that fundamental yearning that drives so much of Bloodborne's narrative. The Vileblood Knights served Annalise with absolute loyalty. They wore noble attire, wielded elegant weapons, fought with skill that rivaled the best hunters in Yharnam. They weren't mindless servants. They were warriors who chose to serve their queen, who believed in Cainhurst's traditions, who rejected the Healing Church's authority. When Logarius and the executioners attacked Cainhurst, the Vileblood Knights fought back. It must have been a spectacular battle. Elegant bloodblade techniques against brutal wheel-crushing violence. Aristocratic warriors defending their home against church fanatics determined to purge corruption. The castle itself bears scars of that conflict. Broken architecture, frozen courtyards, signs of devastating combat. The Vilebloods lost, most were killed. Cainhurst Castle was left abandoned, frozen, lifeless. Only ghosts and a few animated servants remained to patrol its halls. And Annalise, sealed away in her throne room, waiting for someone to break Logarius' seal and free her. In the game, you can join the Vilebloods by pledging to Queen Annalise. You receive the Corruption Rune, which allows you to collect blood dregs for her. This puts you in direct opposition to the Executioners. If an Executioner and a Vileblood encounter each other while summoning or invading, they automatically become hostile. The ancient war continues through players. But what did the Vilebloods actually do wrong? The Church called them corrupt. The Executioners hunted them zealously. But their crimes seem limited to existing independently of Church authority and developing their own blood traditions. They weren't spreading the scourge. They weren't attacking Yharnam. They were isolated in their castle, following their own practices. The real threat the Vilebloods posed was ideological. They represented an alternative to the Healing Church's monopoly on blood ministration. They proved that other approaches to blood were possible. They refused to submit to Church authority. And for an institution built on controlling access to blood healing, this independence was intolerable. So the Church declared them heretical, branded their blood as corrupted, sent executioners to eliminate them, committed genocide against an entire noble lineage for the crime of not bowing to Church doctrine. The Vileblood story is about persecution dressed as righteousness, about how institutions in power label anyone who threatens their authority as corrupt or evil, about the difference between what people are accused of and what they actually did, about having your entire culture destroyed because you refused to submit to someone else's control. Cainhurst still stands, frozen and empty. Queen Annalise still waits on her throne, immortal and patient. The Vileblood Knights are gone, killed by executioners or transformed by the scourge or lost to time. But their legacy remains in the weapons they wielded, the techniques they developed, the proof that the Healing Church's way wasn't the only way. And Annalise's quest continues. She still seeks her child of blood, still invites warriors to serve her, still maintains the traditions of Cainhurst, even though the castle is a tomb. Her persistence is admirable or tragic depending on perspective. She's either maintaining culture despite genocidal destruction, or clinging to a dream that died with her knights. Perhaps both are true. Perhaps that's the Vileblood way, elegant even in death, maintaining nobility even in ruin, refusing to submit even when submission might have saved them. They were called Vilebloods, but the truly vile actions came from those who hunted them. The corruption wasn't in their blood. It was in the institutional power that couldn't tolerate their existence. Not every hunter in Bloodborne's lore can be easily categorized. Some exist as legendary enemies, feared opponents, mysteries that resist simple explanation. These hunters represent the extremes of what hunting can become. The pinnacle of skill twisted into something monstrous. The Bloody Crow of Cainhurst is perhaps the most infamous. You encounter him at the Grand Cathedral if you complete Eileen's questline properly. He's waiting inside, and when the fight begins, you understand immediately why Eileen warned you away. The Bloody Crow wields the Shikaj and Evelyn Cainhurst weapons, but he's clearly also trained as a church hunter. He has access to healing, extensive blood vials, numbing mist to prevent your healing. He uses the old hunter bone to quick-step with impossible speed. He can heal himself multiple times while attacking aggressively, and his damage output is devastating. Fighting him feels less like a boss, and more like fighting another player with better gear and perfect AI. He doesn't telegraph attacks, obviously. He adapts to your tactics. He uses the environment intelligently. Many players consider him harder than actual bosses because he fights like a human would, not like a predictable monster. His backstory is mysterious. The Chicag suggests Cainhurst connection, but his presence at the Grand Cathedral and his hostility toward you suggest church involvement. Perhaps he was a Vileblood who survived the executioners by converting to the church's service. Perhaps he's a church hunter who stole Cainhurst weapons. Perhaps he represents a rare alliance between two factions that otherwise hate each other. What's clear is that he represents everything dangerous about hunters. He's skilled, equipped, ruthless, and completely blood drunk. He's what happens when someone masters all the hunting techniques and loses all restraint. He's why the Hunters of Hunters exist. Someone like the Bloody Crow needs to be put down before he destroys everything around him. Henrik is another notable hunter enemy. He's the old hunter you fight at the Tomb of Uden alongside Eileen. Henrik wears yellow garb and fights with a hunter's axe and hunter's pistol, simple weapons wielded with veteran skill. He's blood drunk, lost to the hunt's intoxication, attacking anything that moves. But Henrik was once a comrade of Father Gascoigne, one of the first hunters players encounter. Henrik and Gascoigne hunted together, trusted each other, relied on each other. The fight at the Tomb of Eden happens near where Gascoigne died. Perhaps Henrik came seeking his friend. Perhaps he found his corpse and something broke in him. Perhaps he was already too far gone to recognize the tragedy. Gascoigne himself is worth mentioning. He's not quite a hunter you team up with, but his story illuminates what happens to hunters who don't maintain control. Father Gascoigne was a skilled hunter, a father, someone who tried to maintain normal life alongside the hunt. But he couldn't balance both. The hunt consumed him. He transformed into a beast mid-combat with you, the final proof that no one is safe from the scourge. His daughter seeks him throughout the early game, unaware he's dead, unaware he transformed. When you tell her the truth through a dialogue option, she wanders into the night and is killed. The entire family destroyed by the hunt's demands. A father became a beast. A daughter died looking for him. A mother was already dead before the game began. The hunt destroys families, destroys connections, destroys everything except itself. The hunter's nightmare contains many hunter enemies representing those who became too blood drunk to function. They wander the nightmare realm eternally, hunting each other and anything else they encounter. They're what all hunters risk becoming if they can't maintain control. Their presence serves as a warning. This is your future if you give in completely to bloodlust. Some of these nightmare hunters wear familiar gear. You see executioner armor, church garb, various workshop equipment. These were real people once. They served the church or Cainhurst or one of the workshops. They believed they were different, that they could handle the hunt's psychological toll. They were wrong. Now they're stuck in eternal torment, mindlessly fighting forever. The League of Confederates, led by Valter the Beast Eater, represents another faction worth mentioning. They hunt vermin that infest people's blood, parasites that corrupt from within. Whether these vermin actually exist or are imagined is ambiguous, but the League hunters believe absolutely in their mission. hunting their invisible enemy with the same conviction other hunters hunt visible beasts. Valter himself is found in the Forbidden Woods, wearing a bucket helmet to block unwelcome sounds. He's clearly not entirely stable, but his dedication is absolute. He uses the whirligig saw, a powder keg weapon perfect for shredding flesh. He represents hunters who've created their own mission, their own purpose, perhaps because facing the meaninglessness of the actual hunt would break them completely. Simon the Harrowed appears in The Hunter's Nightmare, a mysterious bowman who speaks of secrets and conspiracies. He gives cryptic warnings about the church's true nature, about the experiments and atrocities hidden behind holy facades. Simon knows too much, has seen too much, and it's driven him into the nightmare. He's a hunter who prioritized truth-seeking over actual hunting, and the truth destroyed him. Then there's the Crow of Cainhurst, mentioned but never fully explained in the lore. Eileen's armour is similar to attire from Cainhurst, and her fighting style shares similarities with Vileblood techniques. Perhaps she was once connected to Cainhurst before becoming a hunter of hunters. Perhaps there's an entire tradition of crow hunters that extends beyond just Eileen. These scattered hunters, these fragmentary stories, paint a picture of Yharnam's hunting culture as vast and varied. There isn't just one way to hunt. There isn't one philosophy all hunters share. Some hunt for the church, some hunt independently, some hunt beasts, some hunt heretics, some hunt other hunters, some hunt imaginary vermin, some hunt the truth itself. But they all eventually face the same risks: blood drunkenness, transformation, death, eternal torment in the nightmare. The hunt destroys everyone who participates in it long enough. These scattered hunter enemies throughout the game serve as evidence. They're cautionary tales, warnings of what awaits any hunter who can't maintain control or find a way out. The hunt continues. The hunters hunt. And eventually, the hunters become what they hunt. It's the cycle that defines Yharnam, the curse that traps everyone who picks up a weapon and enters the night. These notable hunters, these legendary enemies, these fearsome opponents represent the endpoint of that path. They're not villains, they're victims, failed hunters who became monsters while still wearing hunter's garb. The history of Yharnam's hunt includes countless hunters whose stories have been lost or reduced to fragments, names mentioned in item descriptions, figures referenced in dialogue, legends that have faded into obscurity. These minor hunters deserve recognition even though their tales are incomplete. Otto, founder of the Otto Workshop and predecessor to the Powder Kegs, has been mentioned already, but his influence extends beyond just weapons. He represents the first hunter to formally break from church and workshop orthodoxy, to insist that there were other valid approaches. Every heretic who came after walked a path Otto pioneered. There's the youngest of Djura's companions, the Gatling gun hunter in the Nightmare. We know almost nothing about this person except that they wielded the portable version of Djura's mounted weapon, participated in the burning of old Yharnam, and eventually succumbed to blood drunkenness. Their presence in the nightmare suggests guilt or madness overcame whatever noble intentions they may have started with. Queen Yharnam herself, from the ancient Thumerian civilization, could be considered a hunter of sorts. She defended the Chalice dungeons, fought against intruders, protected secrets that predated the hunt by thousands of years. Her spectral form appears throughout the dungeons, watching, waiting, occasionally attacking. She's a hunter without the title. defending her domain long after her civilization fell. The bell-ringing women who summon help for enemies could be argued as inverse hunters. They don't fight directly, but they enable combat, make fights more dangerous, serve as support for the things hunters are meant to kill. Are they corrupted humans, Thumerian remnants, something created by Great Ones? The game never clarifies, leaving them as mysterious facilitators of violence. Grecia of the Choir deserves mention. Her corpse is found in the hunter's nightmare, and her weapon, amygdalan arm, suggests deep involvement with Great Ones. The choir was the highest echelon of the healing church, scholars seeking cosmic truth. But Grecia's presence in the nightmare and her unusual weapon suggest she went further than others, achieved contact with amygdalas, and paid a price for that connection. There's an entire generation of hunters who died fighting Rorm, the vacuous spider. You find their corpses around Bergenworth's lake, scattered in the water, their weapons still present. They attempted to reach Rom, failed, and drowned or were killed. These unnamed hunters represent the countless who died fighting things they didn't understand, following orders without full knowledge of what they faced. The Tomb Prospectors are a faction worth noting. These hunters delve into the Chalice dungeons seeking old blood and ritual materials. They're the archaeologists of Yharnam's hunting community, braving ancient Thumerian tombs for resources. Many never return. Their corpses litter the dungeons, surrounded by the treasures they sought. They represent hunters who chose greed or curiosity over survival. There are unnamed hunters throughout Yharnam itself. Corpses in the streets, bodies in houses, remain scattered throughout various districts. Each presumably had a story. Each chose to hunt, carried weapons, faced beasts, and each died, adding their bodies to the count of casualties. They're not famous. Their names aren't remembered, but they were part of the hunt, part of the endless cycle. Some item descriptions mention hunters who specialized in specific techniques or weapons. The Church Pic's description mentions hunters who fought for truth. The Beast Cutter mentions a workshop that crafted it. The description implies entire communities of hunters focused on particular approaches, most of whom are now extinct. There are hints of hunters from other lands. Eileen came from a foreign country where sky burials were practiced. Her fighting style differs from typical Yharnam hunters. This suggests hunting exists beyond Yharnam's borders, that other cultures have developed their own responses to beast scourges or similar threats. These foreign hunters remain mysterious, referenced but never detailed. The old hunters, those from earlier generations, are respected in Yharnam's culture. Their weapons and armor can be found in the hunter's nightmare. They represent the original generation, the ones who established traditions younger hunters follow. But individually, most are nameless. Their achievements are collective rather than personal. Master Willem of Bergenworth arguably counts as a hunter, though of knowledge rather than beasts. He sought to elevate humanity through insight, through gaining eyes on the inside. His approach differed radically from physical hunting, but he participated in the same fundamental quest, transcending human limitations. His failure to prevent the tragedies that followed doesn't diminish his significance. Lawrence, founder of the Healing Church, was likely a hunter himself before establishing the institution. He studied under Willem, broke from his master's teachings, brought blood ministration to Yharnam. He eventually transformed into the first vicar of the Healing Church, then later into a horrific, fire-breathing cleric beast. His transformation bookends the entire history of church-sponsored hunting. These minor figures, these fragmentary stories, these lost legends remind us that Yharnam's hunting history involves thousands of individuals. The game focuses on notable figures like Gehrman and Ludwig, but for every legendary hunter, there were dozens of competent ones and hundreds of failures. Each hunter who died made their own calculation. They assessed the risk, decided participation was worthwhile, picked up a weapon and entered the night. Some sought glory, some sought to protect people, some had no choice. All ended up contributing to the hunt's perpetuation, adding their efforts to a collective crusade that ultimately failed to save anyone. Their stories might be lost, but their presence matters. Every corpse you find was a person. Every hunter's weapon lying in the street belonged to someone who thought they could survive. Every reference in item descriptions hints at a life lived and ended in service of the hunt. The hunt consumes everyone, famous or anonymous, skilled or incompetent, lucky or cursed. It doesn't discriminate. It takes them all eventually. These minor hunters and lost legends prove that. They're the countless casualties, the forgotten dead, the proof that individual skill matters less than systemic corruption. And finally, we come to you, the good hunter, the player character, the one who arrives in Yharnam seeking pale blood, who signs a contract with a mysterious figure, who awakens in the hunter's dream bound to serve purposes they don't fully understand. Your story is different from the others because you write it. Your choices determine your fate. Your actions decide whether you escape the dream, replace Gehrman, or transform into something beyond human understanding. You're not bound by predetermined narrative. You're the variable in an ancient equation. When you arrive in Yharnam, you're already different. You resist the full effects of blood ministration. You can die repeatedly without fully transforming. You're connected to the hunter's dream in ways other hunters aren't. Whether this is because you're special or because you're cursed remains ambiguous. Throughout your journey, you follow paths other hunters walked before. You fight Father Gascoigne, learning that transformation spares no one. You encounter Eileen, seeing how the hunt creates hunters of hunters. You meet Djura, understanding that protection and destruction aren't always distinct. You hear stories of Gehrman and Ludwig and Maria, understanding that even legends fall. You're given choices they weren't. You can consume umbilical cords, gaining insight that elevates you beyond normal hunters. You can resist the moon presence, break the cycle that trapped Gehrman. You can become something new, an infant great one cradled by the doll, transformed utterly from the human who arrived in Yharnam seeking pale blood. Or you can accept Gehrman's mercy, wake up in the sunrise and forget everything. Return to normal life. Pretend the dream never happened. Live as a human, free but ignorant. Or you can refuse Gehrman and fail to resist the moon presence, becoming the new host of the dream, taking Gehrman's place as a wheelchair, bound to guide future hunters for however long the dream persists. Your journey illuminates the nature of the hunt itself. You're simultaneously inside and outside the system. You participate in the hunt while maintaining enough distance to see its patterns. You're affected by the blood while resisting its worst effects. You walk the paths others walked, but you walk them differently. Every hunter you encounter shows you a possible future. Gascoigne shows what happens if you can't balance hunting with humanity. Eileen shows the burden of trying to save hunters from themselves. Djura shows what happens when you realize the hunt is futile. Ludwig shows that conviction isn't protection. Maria shows that guilt destroys even the most skilled. The Bloody Crow shows what complete blood drunkenness looks like. But you also have advantages they lacked. You can learn from their failures. You can avoid their mistakes. You can see the patterns they were trapped within. You're not doomed to repeat their fates because you have knowledge they didn't. The doll treats you differently than she probably treated other hunters. She speaks to you with genuine warmth, almost affection. She cares for you, tends to you, worries about you. Whether this is because you're special or because she's kind to all hunters doesn't diminish the connection. In the dream's eternal twilight, the doll provides companionship that prevents complete isolation. Gehrman guides you, but also warns you. He knows what the dream does to people. He knows the trap you're walking into. When he offers you the mercy of death and awakening, he's trying to save you from his own fate. When he fights you, he's trying to free you the only way he knows how. Even as the dream's host, even trapped in service to the moon presence, Gehrman maintains enough humanity to care about your fate. Your character never speaks in cutscenes, never expresses opinions clearly. But your actions speak volumes, choosing to hunt or spare, to consume umbilical cords or ignore them, to trust NPCs or kill them, to finish quest lines or abandon them. Every choice reflects who your hunter is, what they value, how they respond to Yharnam's horrors. The good hunter represents hope and possibility. You arrive after so many others have failed, and you succeed where they didn't. You can defeat Ludwig's beast form and restore his humanity briefly. You can put Maria's spirit to rest. You can break Logarius's eternal vigil. You can resist the moon presence. You can accomplish what seemed impossible. But you also represent the latest in a long line of hunters drawn into the dream, used by forces beyond understanding, serving purposes that might not align with your intentions. You're simultaneously unique and replaceable, special and typical, the hero of your own story and another pawn in a cosmic game. The three endings reflect different understandings of the hunt and the dream. Accepting Gehrman's offer shows you value your humanity over everything else, even if it means living in ignorance. Refusing and being bound shows you prioritize defeating the immediate threat even if it traps you. Consuming the cords and transforming shows you're willing to sacrifice your humanity to genuinely break the cycle. None of these endings are purely good or bad. Each has merits and costs. Each represents valid responses to impossible situations. The game trusts you to make the choice that feels right for your character. Your journey through Bloodborne's narrative reveals the full scope of Yharnam's hunting tradition. You see its origins in Gehrman's workshop. You see its corruption through the healing church. You see its specialization in factions like the Powder Kegs and Executioners. You see its failures in transformed hunters and nightmare realms. You see its persistence despite everything, the hunt continuing because the hunt must continue, and you decide whether to continue that tradition, break it, or transcend it entirely. You're the good hunter, the latest in a long line, possibly the last, definitely the most significant. Your story isn't about becoming like the hunters who came before, it's about learning from them, surpassing them, and determining your own fate despite the forces trying to control it. The rain still beats against your window, or perhaps you've drifted into dreams, these words becoming part of your sleep. That's okay. That's perfect. The stories of Yharnam's hunters can haunt your dreams as they haunt the game itself. We've journeyed through the tragic tales of those who hunted in Bloodborne's dark streets. From Gehrman, the first hunter trapped in eternal service, to Lady Maria, whose guilt couldn't be absolved even in death. From Ludwig, whose holy conviction couldn't save him from the beast within, to Eileen, who hunted hunters until she couldn't anymore. From Djura, who chose protection over destruction, to the executioners who chose destruction and called it righteousness. Each hunter's story illuminates different aspects of the hunt itself, this cycle that perpetuates suffering while claiming to prevent it, the blood that promises healing but delivers damnation, the dream that offers immortality but demands servitude, the nightmare that punishes blood drunkenness with eternal torment. But these stories also reveal something deeper. They're about people trying to do right in impossible circumstances, about making choices with incomplete information, about discovering too late that the system you served was corrupted from the start, about facing consequences for actions you thought were justified, about maintaining humanity in inhumane situations. Every hunter in Bloodborne, from the most legendary to the most anonymous, contributed to a collective tragedy. They participated in the hunt because they believed it was necessary, noble, righteous. They picked up weapons and entered the night thinking they were protecting people. And they were, in a way. But they were also perpetuating the very system that created the monsters they hunted. The hunt never ends because the hunt creates the conditions for its own necessity. Blood ministration creates beasts. Hunting beasts requires more hunters. More hunters need blood ministration for strength. The cycle continues, feeding on itself, consuming everyone who enters it. But understanding the cycle is the first step toward breaking it, and that's what the good hunter does in the best ending. They consume enough insight, gain enough eyes on the inside, understand the cosmic forces well enough to resist being bound by them. They transform into something new, breaking the cycle by transcending it. Whether that transformation is victory or tragedy remains ambiguous, but it's change, and change is the only thing that breaks cycles. As you drift towards sleep or wake to face your own day, carry these stories with you. Remember Gehrman's eternal vigil. Remember Maria's inescapable guilt. Remember Ludwig's false hope. Remember Eileen's thankless burden. Remember Djura's futile protection. Remember that every hunter in Yharnam thought they were different, thought they were special, thought they could handle the hunt without being destroyed by it. Most were wrong. If you enjoyed this journey through Bloodborne's hunters, please consider liking and subscribing. It helps the channel grow and tells me these long-form explorations are valuable to you. And if you have suggestions for future videos, other games to explore, other aspects of Bloodborne to examine, leave a comment. I read every one. The night of the hunt continues in Yharnam. The blood moon hangs low. The beasts rule the streets, and somewhere in the hunter's dream, Gehrman sits in his wheelchair, waiting for the next hunter to arrive. The cycle continues, the stories repeat, the hunt never ends, but you can rest. You can let these dark tales fade into peaceful sleep. You can dream of something better than blood-soaked streets and eternal suffering. You can wake to a world where the hunt is just a story, a game, a nightmare you leave behind. May you find your worth in the waking world. May you dream peacefully, may you rest well, and may the good blood guide you, not to more hunting but to rest. Good night, good hunter, good night.